This is the new Iron Orchid design mold called Cloches. They are really adorable and so much beautiful detail in them. There are 3 of them in the mold, and you can kind of see the size. They fit right across like the palm of my hand, from fingers to the palm. I cast these with amazing quick cast resin, and now I just want to give them a vintage look. So with these molds, they are symmetrical, so when you're casting them with resin, you could do this with air dry clay. It would be a little more difficult, but you can make them 2-sided. I've also seen some beautiful castings with clear epoxy resin, which takes longer to dry. But you're also going to see some other ideas where you can flip these around and make them look like a vase. So many things to do with this. Another thing to keep in mind with this mold is that this is the only product in this release that is not limited edition. So this will continue in the line. It might get sold out, but it will be restocked. All right, so let's keep going. So I painted these with the color Oyster, and once they dry, I am going to give them more of a vintage look by using the Rethunk Junk Dark or the Antique Brown glaze. So my paint wasn't completely dry when I started this, but it's okay. So I'm brushing on the glaze all over my cloche, and then I like to just take a wet wipe and wipe it back. I want some of that glaze to fall into the cracks and the crevices, and this just gives it the perfect little vintage look. I love glaze so much more than wax. It's so easy to use. If you have difficulty using glaze, maybe because it's just a little too thin for you, you have trouble working with it, try just leaving it with the lid off for a few days and let the water evaporate out of it, and it might be a little easier for you to use. We also have a tintable glaze, which would be fun to use on this project. Think about doing this with a green or a red. So I'm going to set these aside and let them dry a little bit, and then you've got it. My next step is a metallic. I'm going to use the classic gold for this one. And with the metallic, I like to just dip my finger in it and use it the same way you would use a rub and buff. But what I like about Rethunk Junk Metallic over a rub and buff is that no buffing is required. I just rub it on, maybe dab it back a little bit with my wet wipe, and I'm good to go. I don't have to remember to come back later and buff it all out to get the sheen or the color that I want. So Rethunk Junk Metallics. I think we're up to 7 metallic colors now, so I really need to play with some other colors with this Christmas release, because I think they would all just be beautiful with it. So I'm just dabbing it here and there along the edges, and I just love what it does for this. It gives it such a great little vintage look. Next step is I'm going to mount them on these little wood pieces that I bought from Amazon. I was going to try to make it a banner, but I'm just going to make them individual ornaments instead. This one I decoupaged a Christmas napkin onto. So I'm just going to use my favorite glue, Titebond Quick and Thick, and get them glued onto the surface. Now it's time to decide on adding a transfer. We have 3 transfer books with this release. This one is called Yuletide. It has all kinds of fun elements to it. what I want to be careful is that the one that I pick will fit across the surface of the cloche. It's okay if it rolls over the sides just a little bit, but for the most part, you want it to fit. I went back and forth in the book several times before finally deciding on which pieces I wanted to use. And after lots of deliberation, these are the pieces I decided on. It's probably the hardest part, is deciding what I want to put on them. You could totally put a mold on them. You could decoupage something over them. Just wait until you see all the ideas that different folks have come up with. But I thought this little package fit just perfectly, and it was very cute. So every transfer comes with a rubbing stick, and I think you can see as I'm putting this on how the top piece goes a little opaque, and you can actually hear when the transfer is releasing from the transfer piece on top. Now let's get them glued down, which I thought I had already done that part, but let's get them glued down using Titebond Quick and Thick. And then, because I'm going to make these an ornament, the last step is I'm going to use these little beads, which I'll give you a tip. Several years ago, I was at yard sales and people were, of course, selling their all their Christmas things. So I bought a bag of garland. And I didn't need all that string of garland, so I cut it and took all the beads off. Now I can use the beads in smaller increments for my ornaments. So I'm using some copper wiring, and I like to use the wiring on these because it's just easier to thread, it's easier to get the beads on with, and I like how I can shape it. So I just put it into the hole, twist it around, and then when I put the bead on, I'm going to slip it over that twisted part to kind of camouflage it. Now I have a cute way to hang it on a tree, or hang it over a knob, or hang it anywhere I want. And if you wanted to add a cute little bow to the top of that, you could certainly do that to zhuzh it up just a little bit more. I just love how these came out.